All right, thank you everybody for attending today's webinar on energy tracking and benchmarking. This is a wonderful opportunity to get to know one of the no-cost assistance opportunities that's available to sustainable CT participating communities. Before we get started, I do want to point out some sustainable CT noteworthy news. For instance, we are our newest episode of The Impact, which is our monthly podcast, will be featuring some of our sustainable CT fellows. So please feel free to tune into that episode. I'll be posting the link in the chat in a little bit if you want to take a look at some of the opportunities to interview some of the college movers and shakers in that sphere. The next event I want to point out is our July coffee hour. This is a hiatus from our June coffee hour, and we're returning on the third Thursday of this month. So that's July 18th from 10 to 11 a.m. And this is your opportunity to have any questions that you may have in regards to sustainable CT fall certification. We're here for that hour to provide any support that you may need. And then last but not least, it wouldn't hurt for me to bring up actually the fall certification deadline date, which is August 20th. If you guys are planning to submit certification, I do have a certification overview link that I'll be popping into the chat in a little bit, just so you guys understand the requirements and the components of submitting a sustainable CT application. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our special guest. Sustainable CT is pleased to partner with Eversource Energy, United Illuminating, and most importantly, the Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology SmartBuildings CT program to provide energy benchmarking and tracking support to registered sustainable CT communities within the utility company service territories. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce my special guest for today, Ms. Amy Thompson, who can tell you all about this no-cost assistance opportunity and turning it and relating it to how it may pertain to your sustainable CT application. So Amy, please take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. I'm really happy to be here today. So I am Amy Thompson, and I'm sorry for my voice. I have some serious allergies going on, so please bear with me if I sound a little nasally today. But I'm happy to be here. I'm the director for SmartBuildings CT, and I've been running this benchmarking program in the state of Connecticut since all the way back to 2012. So over 10 years, we've been helping different towns in Connecticut benchmark their properties. I also have today with me from CCAT, Raquel Bowling. She's the engineer and program lead for this program, and she's the person that's usually in contact with you on a day-to-day basis as we help you build out your energy portfolio. So I'm going to share my slides and we'll get started. So give me just a second. Let's see. So I'm just going to share my screen because I'm having a problem sharing my PowerPoint. Give me just a minute. So do you guys see my presenter slot view or the full page?
We see the presenter view.
Yeah.
There we
Okay,
go.
then hopefully that works, guys. Thank you. So how we work with towns, our main goals are to help you understand your energy usage, to help you lower building energy usage and costs, lower carbon emissions, reduce water usage, improve the occupant experience, and upgrade your building data analysis methods using technologies. So, we support the towns in using EPA's Portfolio Manager online tool for tracking and understanding your building energy usage. We help organizations set up the automatic data exchange so that you can get real-time data, billing data from the utility companies that you work with. And we provide some education on building energy analytics, how to analyze the data from your portfolio. So since 2012, we've worked with many towns. We've worked with over 70 towns in Connecticut to help them benchmark their portfolio. And that was just a snapshot of some of them. So, so one of the things we want to show is, if your organization comes and builds a portfolio using the portfolio manager tool and works with us to build that, what are some of the capabilities of this tool versus what you're doing now that could help you better understand your energy and your buildings? So, some of the folks that come to work with us, they may be using Excel to track their data. They may be using some more sophisticated tools, but we wanted to show you what some of the capabilities of Portfolio Manager were. So one of the things that Portfolio Manager can help folks at your municipality or school system do is when you create this portfolio, um, one of the things we do is match your meters and accounts to buildings. So if you don't have that matching capability, you may be tracking your energy usage and cost by just accounts or account numbers on some sort of collective bill, but it doesn't really help you assess the performance of by building. You can look at whether your electricity or natural gas or oil is going up or down, your maybe your usage, maybe your cost, but you don't actually know how the performance of your building's changing over time. So when we build out your portfolio, we help you match your meters and accounts to buildings. We set up those meters by all the different usage types. So there could be electricity, natural gas, propane, oil, and solar. We set up those meters. We help you enter the billing information in there, and Portfolio Manager automatically converts all of those units, whether it's kWh and electricity, CCF and natural gas, gallons for oil, all get converted to a common unit called kBTU. And so you can add all of those different types of energy usages together into a kBTU, and then you can track your total kBTU of your building over time. So the nice thing in Portfolio Manager is the conversions from all those different units for the meters happens automatically at kBTU in the portfolio. The other thing the Portfolio Manager does is something called weather normalization. And where this matters for benchmarking purposes, a lot of times the energy benchmarking purposes are, at the benchmarking level, you're trying to understand the investments in your building and if the investments you're making are increasing or decreasing your energy over time. The benchmarking also gives you a sense of whether you have a high or low performing building. But one of the things that's helpful with weather normalization, to give you an example, is let's say 2 years ago, you did an energy project in a building. And so now you're looking at 1 year after doing that energy project, and you see, let's say, for instance, that your energy usage went down by 10 or 20%. You could say that, oh, that's due to the project I did. I lowered it 10 or 20%. But your manager, someone may come back and say, well, that's just because the weather changed. It wasn't because we actually lowered the energy in the building. We just used less energy because it was, a hotter summer or a lower, not as hot as summer, or the winter was different. What weather normalization does is collect your heating and cooling degree data from your local weather station. It does that automatically in the portfolio. And then it takes into account, it tries to factor out the impact of weather so that you can just look at the weather normalized energy usage. You can see how that's changing over time. So for instance, you may see that 10% reduction you have when it's weather normalized, it could be adjusted to 5 or 7 or 15% when it's factored out the weather. And that's helpful. Factoring out the weather is helpful to be able to understand your changes from year to year. And that's done automatically in the portfolio. So the other thing that you get in the portfolio that you wouldn't get in Excel is the ability to benchmark your building. And so in Portfolio Manager, you can get an Energy Star rating from 1 to 100 that tells you if your building is, kind of middle performing, average performing, if it's low or high performing based upon that rating. And then you also, some buildings don't get an Energy Star rating, but you would get an energy benchmark comparison. And so, for instance, for that building, it would tell you if you're using 10, 20, or 30% more energy than a typical building. So again, you can figure out if you have a high or low performing building, and that's not something you could do in Excel. You have to actually have that kind of nationwide Energy Star model for benchmarking that helps you get that benchmark. The other thing you can do with Portfolio Manager is on the platform, you can share your data. So you have an account and all of your building and energy information is in there on this account. Other people that you work with can set up free accounts and you can share your data and read-only access or full access to those folks that you're working with. So for instance, you may have 5 or 6 people at your municipality or your school that want to see your data. So the traditional way of dealing with this is you may be emailing or sending around Excel spreadsheets or PDFs of data. Now people can just log in and they can see the data real time in the portfolio. And the other thing you can do in the portfolio is there is some strategic energy management support where you can plan and track your energy projects. And then in the portfolio, you can also get recognized. You can apply for Energy Star certification for your building right inside the portfolio. So these are some of the capabilities that Portfolio Manager has that maybe Excel or other tools that your folks at your town may be using doesn't have. So, what does it mean to get your building Energy Star certified? It typically means if your building scores a 75 or higher, you're eligible to apply for Energy Star certification. This typically means you're using about 35% less energy than a typical building, which is significant. And just from a value proposition, these buildings tend to use about 50 cents per square foot less money to operate because they're energy efficient buildings. So in the portfolio, what does it mean to get a benchmark? So I have some slides here. It's like, well, what can you learn or what can you know when you create this portfolio? What can you know about your buildings? So this is an example of a building in Connecticut. It was a new fire station that was about 2 years old. It was built to be energy efficient. So what can I learn here? Well, I can look at my weather normalized source EUI, my kV2 per square foot, and what you can see in red down there underneath the current and baseline EUI is that this particular building is a poor performing building. It's using 163% more energy than a typical building of this same type and same characteristics, 7 or 8 factors. It's using a lot more. So what would this tell me? Well, if this is a new building that I just built and it's supposed to be energy efficient, it would tell me that I probably have some issues either in the commissioning or operation of this building. And it's just an indicator to you that there's a problem in this building. So what you would want to do is maybe have your heating and cooling systems checked, maybe have an energy audit done to figure out why this building is poor performing when you know it should be performing much better than it is. So you may say, I've installed EE measures, or this is a high performing building. Why is my building still performing so poorly? It's an indicator to you to do further investigation. So one of the other things that you see in your portfolio when you log in and log into each building in your portfolio, the first thing you see on the landing page is you have a metric summary. And this is really helpful for your buildings. So this is an example of a very large high school in Connecticut. In 2011, it had a pretty average or typical Energy Star score of 43. It had a site EUI, was using 75 kBTU per square foot. And you can see this is a large high school. It was actually spending $722,000 per year. That's per year on the energy usage. So this particular school did a bunch of energy projects over several years. And you can see that they were able to improve their Energy Star score to a very high score. Their site EUI went all the way down to 26 kBTU per square foot. And you can see that they cut their energy costs at the school almost in half. So the nice thing about the metric summary is in this table, you can compare any 2 years that you want, and you can see the difference before or after particular projects that you've done, and then you can see the percent change, and this is all calculated automatically inside the tool. So the other thing that Portfolio Manager shows you is it automatically creates this energy use trend graph. And so here you can see The red there is natural gas. You can see the peaks and valleys. You can see the peaks of energy usage during the winter, and you can see the valleys of usage during the summer. The blue line there is for electricity, and you can see the actual little peaks there on July's. That's the peak for your air conditioning load during the summer. And so you can see the variation from season to season here, but you can also monitor and observe upward or downward trends, and for instance, in your electric or natural gas. In this particular instance, you can actually see this was a town building that switched from fuel oil, and you can see the fuel oil there in black and switched to natural gas. So one of the things you can notice here is that the peaks on the natural gas are actually increasing each year, and you can also take a look that actually the peaks on this on the cooling are also increasing some each year. So the graph just helps you visualize at the building level what's going on with your energy usage. You know, is it tracking up or down? And what's the mix? What type of energy is used at that building? And that graph is pretty helpful. So the other thing you can do in Portfolio Manager, this is another table for goal setting. This is an example of a poor performing building that has a really low score of a 13, and so probably needs to be investigated for what's going on with the energy systems in the building. I can set a target, for instance, of, okay, I want this to become I want to go from a really poor performing building to an Energy Star level building at 75, or I could say, look, I want to take this building from a low performing building to a medium performing building at a 50. So on the site energy line there, it actually tells you how much energy you need to reduce to attain either that target or medium property goal. And this information is helpful for engineers or contractors that you're working with, so that they can get a sense of, okay, you're trying to save this much energy every year in your building. They can begin to propose projects to you to help you attain those goals. So one of the other things that's helpful with Portfolio Manager is it's really most useful for folks that have multiple buildings and have kind of a complex set of assets and buildings, because one of the things the portfolio does is let you identify what your biggest energy users are, what those buildings are, and then you can target those buildings for savings. So this is just an example of a town that had about 8 buildings, but you can see that 3 of their buildings actually make up the majority of their energy usage. So this particular town decided to target energy audits and projects at those 3 buildings instead of spending a lot of time looking at some of the smaller buildings that didn't have a lot of potential for savings. So one of the other things Portfolio Manager does is, once you have all your building energy and your energy usage and cost data in the portfolio, you can run reports. And the nice thing about it is you can run reports with almost 1,000 different metrics in Portfolio Manager. You can create those reports and download them in Excel. And then the nice thing about Excel is you can manipulate or organize this or format the Excel reports any way you want to deliver these reports to folks that you work with at your town. So so you might say, okay, this is interesting. I'd like to get some support and help building this energy portfolio. So this is a little bit of the process of how me and Raquel and our interns work with you to create and build your portfolio. So there's kind of 6 major steps there. We usually start by doing a kickoff meeting with the folks at your town or school. At that meeting, we figure out, like, what's your baseline year? How far back do you want to collect data? We determine which buildings you want to benchmark. We collect some initial data that we need to begin our process. And then what we do is we go off and we automatically, wherever we can, we automatically connect your electric and gas meters to the data exchange systems at Eversource and Avangrid. That data exchange backloads historical data. And also, when we set up that data exchange, it'll automatically populate each month your usage and cost data going forward. We also collect some manual data from you. We have to collect manual data for oil and propane and solar and some of the things that don't come through the data exchange system. And we work with you to collect that data, and Raquel and her team automatically upload that data to the portfolio. And then we also collect some building information that helps us um, do the benchmarking scores. So once we do that, we determine missing information. We usually send you back a status report in slide format that shows you, look, this is all the buildings that are complete so far. These are the buildings that might be missing particular information, and we work with you to complete that. Once we complete your portfolio, we set up a meeting to and send out a draft report. And we come into that meeting and we review that draft report with you. For the new process that we have, your energy engineers from UI and Avangrid would actually come into that meeting. They would be able to see the energy benchmarks and assessments, and they would help you see if there's next steps or processes you can do, resources you can get from Energize CT to help you in next steps. And those next steps may be maybe the energy engineers from the utility companies, they take a closer look at some of the buildings that are poorly performing. There's all sorts of analysis they can do in the background to figure out what next steps might be on some of your buildings. They may connect you to some of their partners that can come out and do audits or assessments to help you identify projects to improve the performance of your building. So, the other question I get from folks, is like, what's your effort? What do you have to do to help us collect the information that we need to build your portfolio? So this is our list of the information that we have to work with you to collect. So for the buildings part, we have to identify which buildings you want to benchmark. So we usually just need a list of your buildings with street addresses. And then what happens is Raquel and her team goes and pulls your assessor sheets, collects the static information for those buildings. It could be square footage, year built from those assessor sheets. And we do that work and put that information into the portfolio. The other thing we do is we have a template that's used for K-12 schools and municipal buildings. We send that out and we have to collect for municipal buildings about 4 pieces of information for each building. And those 4 pieces of information are um, the number of typical weekly operating hours, the number of PCs, laptops, computers in the building, and the number of employees that work on the first shift, so that we have a template that we use to collect that information for each building. And that's so that you get an accurate benchmark score. We also have a form that we send out for K-12 schools. There's about 12 pieces of information that we have to collect for schools. And that could be things like the number of student seating capacity, the number of walk-ins in the kitchen and the kitchen at the school. So there's about 12 pieces of information that we need for each building. And again, that helps us get accurate benchmark scores for your school buildings. And then the other thing we do that's helpful, if you can provide the information, is if you know the matching of your electric and gas accounts to your buildings. That makes it easier for us to make sure that we put the right electric and right gas meters on the right building in your portfolio. So we usually ask you just to provide us that list, to provide us a meter matching list of electric and gas meters to buildings, and then we have you fill the templates out with information for the buildings. On the energy side, the utility side, what we usually want you to do is provide us a complete list of the account numbers from your electric and gas accounts for the buildings. This could be part of that matching list, the electric and gas meters to buildings. But what we do need is that account number from your bills, because we use that account number to actually set up the data exchange system so that data comes in automatically to the portfolio. So what is a data exchange system? So the data exchange system was set up by Eversource and Avangrid so that you can get real-time data for electric and gas billing data in your portfolio, and so that you don't have to manually enter that data from bills. And so we set that up for Eversource. It typically backfills all of your historical energy data back to 2012 for electric and gas meters. Or for when that account was created. So it may only go back a few years if the account is new and was just created a few years ago. So that data will backfill and then the data will come in automatically going forward. For Avangrid, which is UI, CNG, SCG, their system automatically backfills 1 year of data, and then going forward fills each month of data going forward. So one of the things that we need your help for getting data into the portfolio is we would need to identify which buildings have oil and propane or other heating fuels other than electricity or natural gas. We usually collect 2 years of that billing data, and that data is usually delivery date, amount, and cost. You can send us this data in PDF form and bill form, and we can enter the data from those bills. Or if you have an Excel sheet where someone has been tracking or entering that data, you can send that information to us in Excel and we'll copy and paste and upload that. So going forward, what we do is we teach you how to enter the oil and propane and solar data yourself going forward so that you can maintain the portfolio on your own by yourself going forward. We would also identify if there's third-party gas or electricity that may not be billed through the electric and gas companies, so that cost may not be coming through the data exchange system. If you receive separate bills for that, that has to be manually uploaded, and we usually help you upload the last 2 years of data for that. For solar, most people in municipalities and schools lease their solar, although some people do own their systems. If you lease your solar, we have to collect um, for that solar system. We have to know how much is being produced each month. And we usually would get that amount from your solar lease statements. So the folks that own or set up your solar, they usually send you monthly statements where they're charging you, whatever it is, 10 cents a kilowatt hour, 15 cents a kilowatt hour for each unit of energy produced, kWh produced by that system. And we would need a copy of those lease statements, similar to how we need copies of the oil and propane statements. Or if you're collecting that data in a portal or Excel, you can just send us that information and we upload it. So this is kind of a summary of the data that we work with you, information that we work with you to upload. We try to do as much of this work ourselves as possible. We try to do the uploading of the data. We try to get as much information as we can from public sources, but at some point we do have to have you send some of the energy usage data, especially for the heating fuels, to us for us to upload. So that is a summary of the program. And what I thought I'd do is maybe stop here and me and Raquel can take any questions that folks have about um, either, the software, the portfolio manager tool, or the program about how you can work with us.
Do we use chat?
So
Do you just speak out?
you
What's
can
the
just you can just speak out, you can just ask questions, I think.
good enough? See, Ron Capozzi, Durham, Connecticut.
Yeah.
See, Sustainable Durham. First question, technical one. Can the portfolio manager be used for non-municipal situations? I.e., we have a regional school system, which is not a part of either school, but a quasi governmental building. We also have one for our transfer station. Um, and let's see, we also have one for a um, a property which we lease out. In this case, a Deerfield Farms, the barn. Um, and so I'm not asking about the the governmental thing, but just mechanically, can portfolio manager be used for those as well?
So portfolio manager can benchmark any commercial or industrial building. So yes, we could do all of those buildings. We could do all those properties. The only ones that we don't do are kind of homes or residential
Right.
properties. We can do multifamily. And then, so part of it too is like what accounts are set up on that data exchange system. So Eversource and Avangrid on that data exchange system, they only have set up commercial industrial accounts, which municipalities and schools fall under. So when we set up, you want to be able to exchange the data that works for all commercials. So we can even benchmark a bank or a restaurant if we want to. We just don't do homes, and
I
that's
understand.
it. So for the regional school districts, we've actually worked with several regional school districts in Connecticut
Hmm.
and have benchmarked them kind of as a separate unit. So we'd be more than happy if you want to connect us with, the person at the regional school. If they want to benchmark their school, we can definitely add that. And I think for Durham, I'm looking at your portfolio. It looks like we have 7 buildings maybe set up for you now in the
Yes,
Durham portfolio. And we could either talk with the regional schools and add the regional school into your portfolio, or we could set up a separate portfolio with just the regional school.
that would be curious. Uh, see, our regional school system is with Middlefield, so I don't know how it would work in the background, but would be interested.
Yeah, so the best way to do that is just find the person who's kind of in charge of operations or energy at that school system, see if they want to benchmark the buildings. You could reach out to them and tell them what you're doing in Durham, see if they want to benchmark, and we would meet with them and we could basically create a portfolio for that regional school district and benchmark all the buildings. It could be the one for Durham, but it may be others that they may have in other districts that we'd be happy to benchmark their buildings for them.
All right. We also have a transfer station which uses just, I think, electricity, DIMIAC it's called. It's a shared station between Middlefield and Durham, but
Yep.
same thing.
So any properties that have electric and gas meters or energy usage, we can create a property, we can create meters, we can the electric and gas meters, as long as they're commercial industrial, which they probably would be at your transfer station, we should be able to set up the data exchange and you would be able to get the data and track the data in the portfolio. You may not get a benchmark score for that type of property, but you could use the portfolio to track the energy usage and cost over time.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Ron. Christine, I saw your hand up, and then Amalia.
Thank you so much. This is super interesting, and it's something I've been kind of curious about for our towns for a while. So great presentation. I loved the idea that the like Eversource or Avangrid can feed the bills right into the portfolio. One of the things I'd worried about with my towns is that everyone is super busy. And if this is
Yeah.
an ongoing commitment of like spending, hours and hours each week or month to update this. So I guess my question is about,
Yeah.
and I'm sure it varies widely, but what sort of time commitment would a municipal staff member anticipate throughout this, like I guess to get set up first and then ongoing each month about?
Sure, that's a really good question. And so I'll kind of ask you, Christine, to kind of figure out the size of your town, and I can probably tell you better. So which town are you with? And
Yeah, so I am with the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments. So
okay, okay, that's
we
great. So you
range
have you
from
have
a
all
population of
sizes.
3,000
Yeah,
to
that's fine.
114,000. So
Okay, great. So so to set up the portfolio, I can tell you the things that are easy, and I can tell you the things that take a little bit more effort from our experience working with towns. To set up the portfolio, like you giving us a list of the buildings and street addresses, that's easy, right? We go pull the assessor sheets, we put that data. There's that building template to fill out, for the municipal building, those 4 pieces of data. For some towns, this is super easy, and some towns find it challenging, and it's probably due maybe to size. When I'm working with small towns that have 5, 7, 10 buildings, getting the number of weekly operating hours, the number of computers, the number of people work at the building, that's easy. If you work with a large city like, the Bridgeport or somebody, when you have to collect that for 50 or 70 buildings, that gets a little overwhelming, right? So, obviously for larger cities, this is a little bit more involved. Um, but it kind of depends, how cities work. They're all a little bit different about how they can get help or support in that. So that can be challenging. The thing about getting that building information is that it's usually one of the last pieces we do after we collect all the energy data. It's those templates is the thing that usually takes the longest, and people are kind of collecting that building data, while we're getting the energy data built out. Um, but the best or worst thing about that building data is like if you don't put in your building data, you can still track your energy usage in the portfolio over time, but your benchmarks are no good, right? Because if you don't say this is the information about my building, that Energy Star score, that benchmark doesn't mean anything, right? It actually uses default values. And so it means that that Energy Star score isn't accurate. So, if you want to use the portfolio to actually know that, look, I have a high performing building. I want to get an Energy Star certified. Like this is a big deal to me to get recognized in my town for all these great projects I've done. Then you probably want to take the time to put the information for that building in so you can get the benchmark score and you can maybe get your building certified. So, there's some towns that don't ever put that building information in and they just use the portfolio to track, but the benchmark scores aren't valid. And that's always a little dangerous because I have to tell people it's like, well, yes, that building says you're 75, but all your values are default values. So that's not the real score of your building. So you really want to collect that information because it's what actually makes the benchmarking helpful. And then, sometimes for folks on the building meter matching, some folks have that, right? They know they have the list of the buildings, the facilities director or the buildings person or the energy person, they have their list of buildings and they know what electric meters and what account numbers are associated with each building. And they just give that to us and we connect the meters and that's really easy. Some folks don't have that. And so, it's kind of a question of, how much like do you have this information already or do you have to go off and get that and figure that out? Sometimes we can get help from Eversource and UI and that, especially in the building matching. We can try to match that ourselves based upon the service address on the bills, but sometimes the service address doesn't match up exactly with the address on the building. And the electric address can be different from the gas address, can be different than the street address. And it's why we can't always match up ourselves, figure out the buildings, the meters to the buildings. The other thing that happens sometimes is your meters sometimes are shared between two buildings. And that's something we don't necessarily understand. So there's two buildings, there's a service address for this meter. And we're trying to figure out like, does it go to this one? Does it go to that one? Does it go to both? And, to be honest, the utility company doesn't necessarily know that. They just know you have a meter. It's associated with a service address. They don't actually necessarily know what building that goes to. And so
So would you
that's where
advise if like as a regional organization, if we wanted to, encourage our towns to do this or roll something out, would you think it's a good idea to work with the smaller towns first because their stuff would be a little more straightforward? Or do you think they could also have these same challenges?
No, I think it varies widely. Like to be honest, some of the large towns we work with, this can go very fast because they've already collected all the information. It's just not in the portfolio. Like the large towns, they know usually have their list of meters. They've got them mapped. They've been doing this in Excel a lot of times, the larger towns. We're just helping them move it to Portfolio Manager. So, so those are the few of the things that can take a little while. And then the electric and gas accounts, connecting those, we do that. Sometimes we have to go back and forth with Eversource and UI. There's sometimes a short list of them that don't connect properly, and we have to try to troubleshoot that. Um, some of a few of the accounts sometimes don't connect at all, and so Eversource has something called large power billing accounts, and those sometimes aren't connected on the data exchange system. So if they're not connected, then we have to manually upload that. So, if you've got 50 accounts, we do the majority of the work, like maybe 48 of them on the data exchange system, but there may be one or two that we have to manually upload the data. And then I would say the biggest barrier for people is sometimes is getting that oil and propane and solar data for 2 years because you have to collect that manually. You send that to us and we upload it. So, this whole process usually takes us, somewhere between, 6 and 8 weeks, working with the town to, if we're able to get the information from folks, to get that done. Um, but it can be very piecemeal, right? We basically go back and forth by email until we have all the pieces complete. And then it's done, and then we can run that report and do a presentation and help you move on and do projects. So to maintain the portfolio, it actually has gotten much easier to maintain the portfolio going forward because of that data exchange. Because really, once you set it up, all you have to really do is update the oil and propane and solar data. And that's really usually a very small amount of that data. Most of it's electric and gas data. And what we do at the end is we can do an hour and a half. Can do a training session with the folks at the town and school. We actually show you how to use portfolio. Can you guys still see me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, my screens were going back and forth, but um, I'm sorry. So going forward, you just have to update that oil and propane and solar data. Most towns do this like kind of on a quarterly basis or twice a year. And that means that you take your bills from that, let's say you 3 months goes by. Most of the towns we work with, they do quarterly reports. They'll manually enter that data. We actually show you how to do that. We'll go into the training session. You can bring a bill of your oil and solar and propane, and we show you how to enter that data into the bill. So depending upon the town, depends upon who's entering that data. We also show you how to run a quarterly report. So after you've updated that data for the quarter, we can show you how to run the report. So you could have an admin in the finance director's office and the public works office and facilities, someplace we can show an admin how to do that data entry, how to run the report. Some folks we work it with, it's the director, and the director is entering that data. He's or she's running the report. Sometimes it's an admin. We can show either or both how to do that. And updating, once you have it built, updating that's the really good news, is that keeping the thing updated is not extremely difficult. And even we have a lot of towns that we've been working with for 5 or 10 years, and we'll still help them with the updates of their portfolio if they need it. So, we're trying to make it where you guys are sustainable, right, at managing your portfolio going forward, but we still have some towns that reach out to us to get help to do updates. So
Thank you, Amy. That
it's a
was
little bit
super thorough. I
long-winded.
really appreciate it. Thank you.
But so the updating for quarterly, if you're a town with 10 buildings and you're updating oil, propane, and solar for 10 buildings quarterly, that can be a half hour, an hour, right? Well, it's not a lot of time. If you've got 50 or 70 buildings, a quarter, maybe you're spending half a day, right? Or a half a day to a day in a quarter of uploading that data and running the report. But with the data exchange system, that's really reduced the amount of time it takes to maintain the portfolio.
Thank you.
Thanks for the questions, Christine. Amalia, you have your hand raised.
Yeah. Hi, Amy and Raquel.
Hello.
So
Hello.
we're somewhere in the middle of a process, I think.
Yeah.
So I just kind of wanted an update on where we are, and hearing you, Amy, I think that one of the things that we moved forward with the benchmarking. We've been doing it for a while, and we gave you the data, but I feel that hearing you talk, that we're kind of it's not coalesced in terms of the administration of who's doing what and why. And I know that our operation manager is working with Eversource. They just put new lighting in all the schools and stuff like that. And so I think it would be really helpful. This has been really helpful to understand the process, and maybe as a small town, it would be helpful to kind of connect, have you come and do a presentation with our operation manager, with someone from the sustainability team, to let us know where we are and be able to move forward as best we can.
Yeah, so Amalia, I think you're with East Haddam, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I could take a look. I know that at some point Raquel did a status report. I actually think your portfolio I'm actually looking at it right now. You got 24 buildings, and all but 2 buildings are up to date through May 2024. So it looks fairly
I think the
complete.
the
Yeah,
two buildings are don't have anything to update. I think I
yeah,
gave Raquel that information, so
yeah.
there's nothing to update there.
Yeah, so it looks like you're pretty close to done. So, I mean, we can follow up with you to set up a meeting to review the status and probably even present the benchmarking report. And
Uh,
Raquel can probably look up and see where we're at with that, but we're probably at a point where we're ready to deliver your benchmarking report to you.
Yeah, I think that would be good, but I think again, a lot of the sustainability team stuff, what I get is that there's this part and this part and this part, and each part is doing, like, our operation manager is not in touch with you guys, that he's in touch with Eversource and doing stuff with them. And in a sense, it would be very helpful that we got more possibility of organizing it so that everyone knows, everyone's on the same page. And again, I don't have the
Mhm.
understanding exactly of how to do that, but that's my request, is how to get everyone, how to know, let the operation manager or the administrator know about you in a way that is not me always as the middleman, but something, or maybe yes, me as the the
Mhm.
sustainability team as the middleman. That
Okay,
that that's my quick.
sure. Yep, thanks for the feedback.
Thank you, Amalia. We are nearing 2 o'clock. So before we close, does anybody have any pressing questions that they would like to ask our special guests? All right. With that
So,
realm of
yeah, so
silence, I think we're going to close. Thank you all for attending. We will be sending out a recording as well as a copy of Amy's presentation for anybody that would be interested in participating in this no-cost assistance opportunity. And for people that have used this webinar as a form to obtain CCMO credit, we will be sending this registration over to CCM so that they will have a record of this and can record your attendance. So I just want to thank again my special guests, Amy Thompson and Raquel Bowling, for joining us today. And any questions at all, please feel free to email us at info@sustainablect.org. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.
Thank
thanks,
you.
Torrin.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Raquel.